Even though it can sometimes feel like we're alone when it comes to things that stress us out, the reality is we aren't. We all have things that trigger us or set us off, things that make us feel anxious, worried, irritated, or even depressed. In this video, we're going to talk about how to cope in healthy and helpful ways. Experiencing things that are uncomfortable, stressful, and even depressing is unfortunately part of life. Things like disagreements with your friends, having your saved information erased on your game, or dropping your phone on the concrete. It's stuff like that that we don't want to deal with. It's small and it's kind of easy to move past. But sometimes the things we'd rather not have to face are bigger issues. Things like police showing up at our home because our parents are fighting again, or siblings struggling with drug and alcohol abuse, or a friend that lies to you over and over, feeling like we can't get out of our depression, being dumped by your boyfriend or girlfriend, living through the coronavirus pandemic. These things are much more painful, and because of that, they can make our feelings much more intense. When we feel that deep depression, that hurt, that anxiety, fear, panic, or pain, or shame, we think we don't want to deal with that. Or maybe you don't know how to deal with it. Maybe we avoid it so we don't have to think about or deal with the feelings or circumstances we're experiencing. Or maybe we feel those emotions so deeply that they actually start to take control over us. Or maybe we simply don't know what to do about what we feel, so we don't do anything at all. We all have different ways of dealing with what we feel. That's called coping. Coping is simply how we deal with the difficult circumstances or situations or feelings in our lives. And usually we cope in either helpful ways or unhelpful ways. Helpful coping skills are so important. They not only help us process our emotions right now, but they set us up for a better future later. Helpful coping skills are things we do that are good for us. They are healthy ways to deal with our feelings. And what's great is there are a lot of healthy ways to cope. You could do things like putting on your favorite playlist, or praying, or talking to a friend, a counselor, trusted adult, your small group leader, getting plenty of sleep, going outside in nature, journaling, watching a funny video on YouTube, eating healthy food. There's so many ways to healthy coping. But on the opposite end, there are also ways of coping with our feelings that are unhealthy. These could be staying in bed for days at a time, binging Netflix or YouTube for hours when we're struggling, punching the wall or breaking things, turning to things like drugs or alcohol, cutting or harming ourselves physically, avoiding or shutting out people who love us and want to help us, spreading rumors or being disrespectful to take the attention off of ourselves, picking fights with our friends or family just to get that anger out. Every single one of us struggles to choose healthy ways to deal with what we feel, even me. I'll be honest with you, I like to binge watch and ignore my feelings. And I think one reason that we avoid coping is because it can be difficult. Now, sometimes we can take healthy ways of coping and make them unhealthy, creating more problems. Here's what I mean by that. When we go for a run, that's good because it helps us take a break and work out some anxiety or frustrations. But when we run for days to avoid our anxiety, that's when it could lead to harm for us physically. When we watch a couple hours of Netflix to make ourselves laugh when we're sad, that's totally okay. But when we watch Netflix for 24 hours straight because we don't want to deal with what's making us sad, that's not okay. When we take a nap because we're overwhelmed, that is so helpful because it can re-energize us. But when we sleep all day and don't get out of bed, that's not so helpful. The problem with all these unhealthy ways to cope is that they only work for the moment. You might feel better right away, but at the end of the day, the feeling you're experiencing is still there. The reality is, we are going to face difficult circumstances and big feelings for the rest of our lives. That's why it's so important to think about healthy ways to cope now as a middle schooler. Now, I want that for you more than anything, but so does God. The thing is, people have been experiencing intense feelings in difficult situations since the beginning of time. And I want to jump into a book in the Bible that's found in our Old Testament, which is the portion of the Bible that was written before Jesus was here on earth. This particular book is called Lamentations, which sounds like a lot of fun, right? Well, the definition of a lamentation is kind of a way to express deep grief, pain, or sorrow, so not as fun as it sounds. The person who wrote this book was dealing with a lot of sadness. They just witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem. It was a pretty horrible situation. A lot of people died, and most of those who survived were starving, injured, and homeless at this point. So let's take a look at what this person wrote, witnessing this devastating situation. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet, this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Okay, so let's just take a quick second and break that down. First in this passage, there's a reality check. The author made a choice to deal with how they felt. They acknowledged the painful stuff and named all the things that were hard for them in this moment. You know what this verse tells me? It's okay to feel pain and sadness and isolation and despair and whatever else we might be feeling. It's when we let those feelings control us or cause us to do unhealthy things that they become a problem. But in the second part of this passage, something changed. The author's sadness turned to almost a little optimistic. Instead, they made another choice, to do something to help deal with their feelings, a choice to take action, a choice to cope in a more helpful way. The author of Lamentations chose to cope by focusing on God's love and his faithfulness. They made the choice to have hope. Each day with God, there's always a possibility for more, for better, for help, and for hope. Does that mean that things just suddenly got better for them? No. But they coped by reminding themselves every day that God's compassion never fails, and with God's love, they didn't have to be controlled by circumstances and feelings. And the truth is, that's the same for you and me. You can have hope. You can choose to find healthier ways to cope that will carry you forward. You can choose what to do with how you feel. And while coping in healthy ways may not fix everything or make what you're dealing with go away, it will help you manage the big feelings and difficult circumstances you may face. Remember, you can choose what to do with how you feel. So, what does choosing a healthy and helpful way to cope actually look like? Well, you can start by asking yourself a few questions. The first one, what's one part of my life that's difficult to deal with? Maybe you're dealing with a bad grade, or maybe your dad left, or maybe you feel anxious about the state of our world right now. Whatever it is for you, be honest with yourself about what's making it difficult for you to cope. Name it, talk about it. And the second question, what do I usually do when I feel this way? Do you avoid it? Do you ignore it? Do you procrastinate? Do you blame others? Do you get grumpy? Do you get help? Do you go on a walk? Do you pray? Do you practice deep breathing? What are your go-to coping skills? Are they helpful and healthy or not? Now here's the encouraging part of all this. You get to choose helpful ways, healthy ways to deal with what you feel. So the next thing you can do is start by choosing to change some patterns for the better. Instead of shutting down, talk to your small group leader. Instead of binging Netflix, give yourself a time limit. Maybe take an hour break from that assignment that's stressing you out instead of procrastinating for days. Try listening to a worship playlist or writing down a prayer, looking up some verses to help you kind of shift your focus. Whatever it is, just make one small adjustment, take one small step towards a healthier way of coping. Now, I want to just pause and stop right here. There may be somebody watching today, and the behavior you're using to cope is more than just unhealthy, it's harmful. They're hurting you and leading you down a difficult path. Or maybe the coping skills you have are there for a reason, because your circumstance isn't good. If that's you, please know we want to help you through that. Talking to your small group leader or a trusted adult who can help you deal with whatever you're facing is a way to start getting the help you need. So please talk with someone, please. If you're struggling to change your patterns for the better, try shifting your focus to what you know to be true about God and how He feels about you. You see, God loves you so much, exactly how He made you. He created you just the way you are, and He loves you and would love to be your friend. He's also promised that He is working for good in everything that you're going through, even if it's really, really hard. He says that He will never leave you. He loves you too much. He's with you right now, and His heart is filled with love for you. He is your biggest fan. Now, there may be some of you here watching right now, you didn't know any of that. You didn't know that God cared about you that much. Well, He does. And the best part is he wants to be in a relationship, a personal relationship with you. But God won't force a relationship with us. We have to make that choice for ourselves. We have to invite him in to be a part of our lives. And how we do that is very simple. You see, God sent his son Jesus to our world. And while he was here, Jesus laid down his life for us and rose from the grave 3 days later. By dying for us, Jesus showed us that God is for us. And when we put our trust in Jesus and what he did for us, that's when we can start our personal relationship with God. So, I want to give you an opportunity to do just that. I'm going to pray a prayer. You can repeat each line after me. These are not magic words. Words aren't what matter. It's what you feel on the inside that matters. Your desire to have a personal relationship with God. So, pray with me. Dear God, I know I sometimes cope with my feelings in unhealthy ways, but you still love me. I believe you are with me right now, and I believe you are working for good in what I'm going through. I want to start my personal relationship with you today. Thank you for sending your son Jesus to die for me, and thank you for helping me cope in helpful and healthy ways. Amen. Listen, if you just prayed that prayer with me, you just made a great decision. You have a personal relationship with God, and we want to give you a gift. It's a box. It's got a New Spring Bible in it. It's got a 31-day challenge in it. And it's got a book that was written by our pastor. All things to help you navigate your new relationship with God. All you have to do to get that is text PRAYED to 97,000 and we will send you one. As you leave today, I just want you to remember that you can choose what to do with how you feel.